Hi, I'm Nico. I hate updating slides, so I'm something at somewhere. I'm an engineering manager at Dynatrace. I work with two platform engineering teams. Started in robotics, kind of went from there to automating dev tooling stuff. I like when automation and stuff makes lives easier, so I'm also really curious about the AI talk later. This talk is a bit more, I think, about the human side of software development and teamwork. And to start off, I put peer programming on the intro slide. What do I mean by peer programming? Just the kind of combination term of collaborative software development or collaborative development work. So peer programming, two people working on code together or on solving a problem together, and mob programming, or some people like to call it ensemble programming, just a group of people around a computer solving a problem together with code. I really like the mob programming picture of you're there with pitchforks and you're trying to solve a problem. Angry mob of developers. So yeah, collaborative development work that some of you might have done or all of you might have done. And with that, I'm actually starting off with some question. Who has done peer programming? Like half the room. Okay, good. Kind of usual. Who has done mob programming? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 5 people, 6 people. Awesome. That is also usual, I would say, depending on the amount of people here, but usually not that many people actually tried that. Those of you who've done either, have you enjoyed it? Yeah, well, kind of, yes, most. Some maybe didn't, okay. Is your team actually frequently doing it, especially if you enjoyed doing it? Yeah, I see one nod. Awesome. I think I gave some form of this talk twice now, and I think that's the first time at least one person actually says yes, they've done it frequently. Amazing. To kind of preempt the question later, my teams neither do it frequently. Like it really depends, I think, on team and group. But cool. So this is a rhetorical one. I'm going to give you an answer there. Why are we actually doing peer programming? What are reasons commonly that we might sit together and solve a coding problem? Usually the reasons you will hear is it helps us in learning. It helps us in knowledge sharing. A lot of teams use it for onboarding purposes, right? You have a new joiner to a team. It's a nice way to guide them not only to the code, but also through how you work and how you kind of approach problems and find things. Another usual reason, if you look at things like extreme programming, it's code quality. It's kind of a review mechanism that code is better if there's 2 pairs of eyes working on it. Kind of maybe a similar approach to, or different approach to what we try to do with pull requests and code review that way. Quite a lot of common criticism and quite a lot of why people don't usually do pair programming that much. There's actually not a single proven benefit. So I actually, for this talk, went and looked at studies and research, and there's one study that gets quoted over and over. It's from the 90s. It only covers students and working groups. It just has no relation to actual professional software development. So there's no thing you could point to and show your manager to say like, hey, code programming, peer programming, it makes us better, proves our quality, makes us faster, whatever. There's nothing where you could actually prove it. That's kind of the obvious thing. It's inefficient, right? Suddenly I need 2 people or even a whole team to produce the same amount of code or the same lines of code if you want to use a stupid measure of productivity. But overall, it feels less efficient, right? It feels like suddenly more people work to produce the same thing. And the one I really find interesting and what this talk is kind of based on is for me realizing it's kind of people don't like it that much, usually. Like out of a group, it's usually not everyone who's tried it actually says, hey, I really like it. And people tend to find it kind of difficult. And that is for me the interesting thing to kind of look into a bit more with these talks. Pairing can be difficult, and I believe it can be difficult to do because it puts you in a very different situation to how you usually create code or solve a problem. It puts you into a situation where you're kind of a bit vulnerable, where you are sharing your ideas, where you're directly sharing your thought processes, where you might fail. And you do that with other people in the room. You don't get the benefit of, I sit there in my chamber on my computer, I solve the problem, I discuss it with myself, and then when it's really polished and when it's done and finalized, then I show it to other people. And then they might still tell me that it's not good, but I kind of did my best work. So it puts you in that weird situation where you fail and you make errors together. And for me, that's the interesting part, because that is where it might be inefficient, it might be not so comfortable for us as developers, but it can actually be an interesting thing to do for team purpose and for actually creating something together. So I jumped ahead to that slide because that's what I wanted to tell you. Why should we be doing that? I told you in the title, it's team quality, duh. What do I mean by team quality? For me, it's kind of three aspects that made a good team, say generally also outside of software development. But the one part is trust, right? A good or great team actually is consisting of people who trust each other. The second part is having a shared vision. So being clear on where you want to go together and kind of having that frame of what do we want to do? How do we do things? The other part, shared ownership, kind of really viewing as the thing that you create together, being something that you also own together. Not here is my code and it works, but then I integrate it with another feature and that doesn't work because it's someone else's. So these three things, trust, shared vision, and the shared ownership, are actually things where peer programming can help us with, especially from the perspective of creating something together. And the first part, we kind of share as we create something. We share our unpolished work and we share our thought processes with people. And in that, we're kind of making ourselves vulnerable, but we're also understanding the thing that we're creating better, and we're understanding our colleagues, our peers a bit better. If, I don't know, I approach a problem one way and someone else approaches another way, if we sit together and actually approach the same problem, in pair programming, we kind of learn that about each other, and we share a bit more about how we work, what we like, what is important, and that can help us to build trust and also build a bit of a shared ownership because we created something together. Told you that. We kind of get a deeper understanding of our colleagues as humans and how they work, what they like to do, what they don't like to do, when they actually need a break maybe, or when they really get down into a problem. And that's something where we can create trust by just sitting together at a laptop or at a Zoom screen or whatever. So that kind of comes from vulnerability. That's kind of the trust perspective. The other part that pair programming, mob programming, I really find super helpful with is when we actually give feedback. It allows us to give feedback at the moment where it's best heard, because we're able to give feedback while actually creating something rather than at the point where we're already solved the problem. In my sample from before, right? If you get a task, you work on it, you kind of sit with your own laptop with your thoughts, you work on it, you figure it out, and when you open a pull request and you share it to someone, you're actually done, right? You think the work is done. And at that point, I come in and I tell you, no, actually, you didn't think of that, you didn't think of that. And should we really do it that way? I think actually we should do it a different way. It's a really bad moment to receive feedback and also to give feedback, because in your mind, you're done. You're off to the next task. You finished that. And then later I come in and tell you, no, actually, now we should do it differently. So actually doing that while you create the code and while you tackle the problem puts you in a very different position to listening to the feedback, because it gives you actually, now that you say it, while I think through it, we should do it differently. That makes sense. So it gives us a better moment to collaborate on problems together and solving the problem together, rather than kind of that oppositional perspective of, hey, I critique your work after you're done doing it, or in your mind you're done. So that kind of very, very small thing to when are we actually open to hear feedback or pairing on a problem that we solve can really help, in my experience. Another thing, and I've been very initially kind of gave that talk when we were getting out of COVID and working together and being thrown into remote work without really knowing in all companies how to do remote work well and remote teams. If you pair, it can give you some moments of collision between people who don't usually collide or who don't usually work together. If you remove the aspect of, I meet my colleague at a coffee, I meet my colleague on the way out of the office and we chat. So it gives us some additional one-on-one moments between people. While we solve a problem, we might chat about something else. We might talk about what we do on the weekend, and we do it with different people on our teams, and it gives us an opportunity to have some additional moments throughout our day. Maybe not so much a factor now anymore, where most people are kind of focusing on getting back to the office, but there's still reasonable amount of, I think, hybrid workplaces. So for us, we're in an office 2 days a week, and otherwise it kind of spreads out. There are some people you don't see for half of the week or more. If you actually kind of intentionally try to pair, you might see them and you might get to know these folks that don't usually come to the office. And yeah, I told you that you might not connect otherwise. Good. What I told you so far is kind of really mostly applicable, I would say, in pair programming, also applicable in mob programming and group programming. But there's one aspect to mob programming, to actually getting together as a whole team and trying to figure something out, where it applies not so much to the trust aspect or the shared ownership, but to the vision aspect, right? I said, in my mind, a great team actually shares a vision. They agree on how to do things. They agree on where they want to go together. And if you actually do mob sessions, really sit together, either creating code or also some teams do it in a way to review code, right? You do change a big piece of code, you do a review session where everyone gets in a room and you review it and you discuss it. And in doing that, you actually get a creative process in the whole group that helps you strengthen that shared vision, not so much in like functionally where we go, but in how we work. Because while you do that, you might figure out work agreements, coding standards. Do we actually name our classes that way? Do we need to even define it? Do we want a certain amount of test coverage? Do we want a certain type of test to cover certain features? In a lot of places, if you have these discussions about standards and shared agreements, it's usually someone coming into a team and saying, hey, usually I like to do it that way. My old team did it that way. And you have a discussion about, yeah, but why? Do we really need it? Does it work? But usually someone trying to bring it in and convincing the others. If I do this while I create something together as a whole team, or even while I review something together, it can emerge more organically. We might realize in discussion, hey, actually, it would make sense for this kind of problem if we did these types of tests, because we realize it's not quite well covered if we actually discuss it as like 6 people in a room. Yeah, naming patterns, linter rules, whatever. Usually every software developer likes to argue about for hours without any reason other than preference of I like it better that way. You can have these while doing work and while creating something. It usually takes, again, a bit of the adversarial perspective out of these discussions if you actually create something like a work agreement together. Yeah, it also kind of shares or ties into the aspect of values, right? If I have certain agreements that emerge while I figure out code together, that probably also tells me what do I value as a team, what do individual people on the team value, and where do I really agree, all of us together, that this is important to us. It's important for us that, I know, we have X amount of test coverage, or we have these types of tests if we do a big feature. Yeah, that actually brings us to the point of I do talk a bit too fast for this talk. Brings me to the end of why I actually think that peer programming can be something where even if there's no provable value in it makes us faster, it makes our quality better, there is a lot of value in how we behave as a team and how we interact with as humans in a team. If you haven't done it, and I would say like, I don't know, 50% of the room haven't really tried pair programming, or maybe more, and even less tried mob programming, a few general pointers of where could you start with that? The easy one is go do it. No one will mind. No manager will ever notice if 2 people sat together and solved the problem. Do it. Try it out. The other part, don't overdo it, right? Some teams have very strong opinions that we need to do pair programming. We need to do it for every single thing. Like we need to change a comment here, or we need to change documentation. That needs to have 2 people doing it. You don't. Don't overdo it. Do it with breaks, do it intentionally, do it actually then when you have uncertainty. And there is some big new thing that you're starting where I'm not quite sure, how do I solve that functional problem in code? Do I go way A, B, C? Especially if you start big things and have a lot of uncertainty, like getting everyone in a room and just starting to think through the problem on a screen with some code already can be really helpful. But then when you've kind of unlocked the uncertainty, you can totally split back up and work on your own. There's no benefit, in my opinion, there's other opinions on this, to always do this, right? It's perfectly fine if I say it's all figured out. We have 5 different things that need to happen. We just go do them. And when they're done, we meet back up again. The other part is like usually when people say, let's try pair programming, there's that idea of I just sit at a laptop with 2 people. We have a screen or whatever. We have a screen, we have a keyboard, we do something. And because we sit there together, that is now pair programming. It's going to make us better. It's not true. There's actually a ton of techniques that actually help you to kind of moderate what you're doing and figure out useful ways of working together. It's not just we sit there at a computer. That's what I just said. 2 very general ones, if you really want to start trying out something, are driver navigator and ping pong pattern. There's the only AI-generated image in there. Everything else is actual photos from actual people, which are Creative Commons. But driver navigator as a pattern is the one you usually see and you also usually use when you try to train someone or show someone a new code base. So one person actually doing the things, typing it, writing some code, thinking a bit, and another person navigating and telling them, yeah, we should do a test here, and that actually is a code change that we need to do over in this class. And if we do it there, that might have an impact over there because we're changing an API. And really actively only one person writes and the other kind of guides and figures out where we want to go. The important part with all of these techniques is you usually switch in pretty frequent patterns. So you do it a bit and then you switch roles. Ping pong is a really fun one if you do test-driven development. Because ping pong is a way where one person writes a test, the other implements so that the test passes, and then you switch over. There you maybe really get into the weeds of, is this giving us more quality while making us inefficient? But it's really fun to switch over. I wrote the test, you make it pass, and then I get to actually fix the problem. There's more. Overall, they also apply to mob programming. There's not so much like concrete things in terms of patterns or things you could do if you have a big group. But overall, these are starting patterns to just try out. I would really say if you try it out, actually use something that gives you a structure to pair programming rather than just we sit at a computer and we hope it makes us better in some way. So be clear on the roles, switch them kind of frequently, and only think about dropping a fixed structure if you actually know the structures and if you actually know, does that help us here or doesn't it? I've usually, with teams I've worked with or folks in my team, seen it fails completely if we approach it, hey, we really want to do pair programming, and then we just sit there on the screen and pretty quickly everyone realizes, yeah, that's not helpful. So, not sure where that is. It's actually a quote from someone, pair promiscuously. So switch with whom you pair. Don't just always have your buddy that you like to code with and that you understand. Switch through the team. Get different ideas into your code styles, into your workflow. And if you do that, you get that benefit of getting more connection in the team and you're getting more connection between everyone in a team rather than just the pairs and the groups who always work together and like how they work anyway. The other part, which I've done with some teams and some people really wanted that, I don't get it. Drop the async pull request code review after. You already had 2 people looking at it. There is no benefit to then block you again. And it's the thing, like if you look at why extreme programming does pair programming, it's because they don't have a concept of we do blocking async code review afterwards. They just go like, yeah, we want 4 eyes, so we have 4 eyes write the code and then it's good. It's going to be good enough. And kind of the final slide to leave you with, keep going. It's iterative like everything. So if you want to try pair programming and say some form of it works, some form doesn't, just keep going, keep trying, keep iterating, keep reading up on how might it work well, how might it not work well for me. And yeah, maybe try it with 50 AI agents and make them mob programming while you go have a coffee.